In this video, I'll be exploring the ideas of the anarchist thinker and revolutionary Mikhail Bakunin concerning bourgeois democracy. Political commentators and the media are constantly singing the praises of the system of representative democracy, in which every few years or so the electorate is asked to put a cross on a piece of paper to determine who will control them. This system works well insofar as the capitalist system has found a way of gaining legitimacy through the illusion that somehow the voters are in charge of running the system. Bakunin's writings on the issue of representative democracy were made at the time when it barely existed in the world, yet he could see, on the basis of a couple of examples, the United States and Switzerland, that the widening of the franchise does little to improve the lot of the great mass of the population. True, as Bakunin noted, politicians are prepared to issue all sorts of promises, but these all disappear the day after the election. The workers continue to go to work and be exploited, and the bourgeoisie takes up once again the problems of business and political intrigue. Today, in the United States and Western Europe, the predominant political system is that of liberal democracy. In Britain, the electoral system is patently unfair in its distribution of parliamentary seats, insofar as some parties with substantial support get negligible representation. However, even where strict proportional representation applies, the Bakuninist critique remains scathing. The representative system requires that only a tiny section of the population concern itself directly with legislation and governing. Bakunin's objections to representative democracy basically rest on the fact that it's an expression of the inequality of power which exists in society. Despite constitutions guaranteeing the rights of citizens and equality before the law, the reality is that the capitalist class is in permanent control. So long as the great mass of the population has to sell its labour power in order to survive, there cannot be genuine democracy. So long as people are economically exploited by capitalism and there are gross inequalities, there cannot be a free society. But as Bakunin made clear, if by some quirk a socialist government were actually elected, in real terms things would not improve much. When people gain power and place themselves above society, he argued, their way of looking at the world changes. From their exalted position of high office, the perspective on life becomes distorted and seems very different to those on the bottom. The history of socialist representation in Parliament is primarily that of reneging on promises and becoming absorbed into the manners, morality and attitudes of the ruling class. Bakunin suggests that such backsliding from socialist ideas is not due to treachery, but because participation in Parliament makes representatives see the world through a distorted mirror. A workers' parliament engaged in the tasks of governing would, said Bakunin in his 1870 work on representative government and universal suffrage, end up a chamber of, quote, determined aristocrats, bold or timid worshippers of the principle of authority, who will also become exploiters and oppressors, end quote. Quote, bourgeois socialism is a sort of hybrid located between two irreconcilable worlds, the bourgeois world and the workers' world. It corrupts the proletariat doubly. First, by adulterating and distorting its principle and programme. Second, by impregnating it with impossible hopes accompanied by a ridiculous faith in the bourgeois' approaching conversion, thereby trying to draw it into bourgeois politics and to make it an instrument thereof. End quote. The point that Bakunin makes time and time again in his writings is that no one can govern for the people in their interests. Only personal and direct control over our lives will ensure that justice and freedom will prevail. To abdicate direct control is to deny freedom. to grant political sovereignty to others, whether under the mantle of democracy, socialism, republicanism, the people's state, or whatever, is to give others control and therefore domination over our lives. As Bakunin made clear, economic facts are much stronger than political rights. So long as there is economic exploitation, there will be political domination by the rich over the poor. It might be thought, at least by some, that the referendum in which people directly make laws would be an advance upon the idea of representative democracy. This is not the case according to Bakunin, for a variety of reasons. Firstly, the people are not in a position to make decisions on the basis of full knowledge of all the issues involved. Also, laws may be a complex, abstract and specialised nature, and that in order to vote for them in a serious way, the people need to be fully educated and have available the time and facilities to reflect upon and discuss the implications involved. The reality of referenda is that they are used by full-time politicians to gain legitimacy for essentially bourgeois issues. It is no coincidence that Switzerland, which has used the referendum frequently, remains one of the most conservative countries in Europe. With referenda, the people are guided by politicians who set the terms of the debate. Thus, despite popular input, the people still remain under bourgeois control. Finally, on the whole concept of the possibility of the democratic state, Bakunin thought that the democratic state is a contradiction in terms, since the state is essentially about force, authority and domination, and is necessarily based upon an inequality of wealth and power. Democracy, in the sense of self-rule for all, means that no one is ruled. If no one rules, there can be no state. If there is a state, there can be no self-rule.